Hello, everyone. I'll let you all get settled in. My name is Nicole Wu. I am with Hawaii Children's Action Network. And thank you for taking time out of your day for this training. It's good to see everyone's faces. We have 1 hour, so I'm going to get us started quickly. Again, I'm Nicole from Hawaii Children's Action Network, and this is the Child Tax Credit Navigator training. Can you do screen sharing, Deb? Or can I do screen sharing? So just to let you know, the child tax credit was enhanced this year. 72,000 more children in Hawaii are likely eligible for the child tax credit than in prior years. But we also know that a lot of people have not been accessing it because they haven't been in the tax system. Code for America is an amazing national organization that has put together a simplified portal to help people who aren't in the tax system do a very simplified tax filing so they can access their child tax credit and some of their stimulus payments as well. So this is a very quick intro. Right now, for the rest of the year, families can get up to $300 per child per month. And then after the end of the year, they can get the second half of their annual child tax credit in their tax filing, and our trainer will talk to us about that. So far, we know that, actually I should press this thing here to make it bigger. So far we know that people in Hawaii, parents in Hawaii who have been getting the child tax credit are spending them on really important things. More than half have spent it on food. This is between July and September. School books and clothing are the second top 2 things that parents are spending their child tax credit money on. So this is a very important thing to get to families so that they can make ends meet. Unfortunately, we know that some of the families that really need this the most, the lower income families, houseless families, and immigrant families who might not speak English, might not think that they're eligible, they're missing out. It's estimated that 4 million kids across the country are not accessing the child tax credit. And in Hawaii, that's over 15,000 children. And that's to the tune of $51 million in unclaimed tax credit in our child tax credits in our state. And this is really where you come in. So we're gonna learn from our trainer today about how we can help people in our community. And here's some links from Hawaii Children's Action Network, where we're going to be posting all these resources, the recording of this video and other outreach materials. And then below that are 2 links for the simplified filing portal for us here in Hawaii. Hawaii Children's Action Network is sponsoring this along with the Hawaii Coalition on Immigrant Rights. So I'm gonna pass this on to Liza Gill from there.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you so much for being on this. Came together rather quickly. I just wanted to let people know that we were approached by the Protecting Immigrant Families campaign, who wanted to make sure that our marginalized populations in Hawaii, including Asian American and Pacific Islander communities and those that are limited in English proficient, really were brought into this fold and made sure that there was specific outreach to those folks. So that's why we're jumping into this, and it feels like head first, but as the co-coordinator for the Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights, working with about 25 immigrant-led and serving organizations across the state, we're very excited to be working on this project, and we'll have more information at the end about what that's going to look like, and some potential opportunities for community leads to help us in working on this very concertedly over for the next month, and then for another about 5 months or so as well. So I'll give it back to you, and hopefully I have a couple minutes at the end just to give more details on that.
Okay, so I'm going to open this up to Courtney O'Reilly from Code for America. She's been working on the child tax credit simplified filing portal and groups around the country for quite a while now. She's a real expert, and we're really lucky to have her with us to talk to us here in Hawaii. So Courtney, take it away.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for that introduction, Nicole, and just so excited to be here and talking with you and seeing how many of you were able to join. I know this was last minute, so I'm just incredibly happy to see so many of you engaged in this effort. I can go ahead and share my screen. All right. And so we're just going to jump right into it and get into the meat of everything. So this training and the resources at GetCTC were created by Code for America. And Code for America is a nonprofit organization that partners with government to strengthen the delivery of public service through human-centered technology. And so I just want to make sure we're all kind of starting from the same place of what is the child tax credit? I know we usually use the CTC acronym, but we really want to make sure that everybody understands what this is. So this credit has been around actually for decades, but there were some important temporary changes that were made to the credit under the American Rescue Plan. And so the plan made it so that you don't have to have taxable income or make enough to be required to file in order to get this credit. It's also increased the amount of the credit available per child. So if you have qualifying children, you could receive up to $3,600 for each child age 5 or younger, or $3,000 for children between the ages of 6 and 17. The American Rescue Plan also allows for up to half of the credit to be paid in advance during 2021, but time is quickly running out to claim the advance payments, and that's why we're having this training to talk about it in a little bit more detail. So one thing I just also want to call out that has been a concern for families is that these payments are not included as income and does not disqualify a family for other important benefits. This credit is also available to mixed status households. So if a child has a valid Social Security number, their parents, regardless of their status, may still be eligible for this credit. And just a couple of basic qualifications. And while there's a lot of information on the screen, I do want to pause and just say, you are in no way expected to memorize this. This is not something that you feel that you have to automatically go to and have at the tip of your tongue. I don't even have this memorized after doing this training countless times. It's something that we hope that our GetCTC tool is actually asking the right questions to make sure that everybody who's using the tool is qualified so that you don't have to determine that yourself. So the first is that they do have to make under a certain amount of money, but as you'll see on the screen, that's $150,000 for filing joint and $112,500 for head of household. So typically, most of the families we're seeing that are missing out on this credit are far below that filing threshold. And the important piece is that filers do not need to have taxable income or a filing requirement. I'll say that a few other times throughout this presentation, just because we know that for years they had to have a minimum amount of income. So many families were not included in the child tax credit, now all of a sudden qualify. The next piece is, as I mentioned briefly on the previous slide, parents or eligible guardians can have either a Social Security number or what's referred to as an ITIN, which stands for Individual Taxpayer Identification Number. And those are for people who are unable to get a Social Security number, typically undocumented workers. And then in order to be a qualifying child, there's a relationship qualification. So the child must be the client's son, daughter, stepchild, or adopted child. They can also be a younger sibling, half sibling, a step sibling, or a descendant of any of them. So that means that a grandparent may be the correct person to claim a grandchild for this tax credit. There's also the ability to claim foster children that are placed with you by a government agency. Big thing is that the child needs to be under the age of 17 at the end of 2020, and they must have a valid Social Security number. Other two kind of things that are in there is also that the child must live with the client for more than half of the year in 2021 in the United States, and the child did not provide over half of their own support. All right. And as Nicole just previously mentioned, 4 million children in low-income families risk missing out on monthly child tax credit payments. And there is a deadline to receive those advance payments, which is November 15th. So we have a little less than a month to try to get as many families enrolled in this, they can receive those advance payments. So why are families missing this benefit? Well, there's a couple of reasons that we've noticed just in the work of reaching out to non-filers and some studies that have been done by other groups. The top reason is they don't think they have to file their taxes. So for many people, when they hear you don't have to file your taxes, you don't have a filing requirement, they celebrate and they walk away. Great, one less thing they need to do. When in actuality, by filing their taxes, they may be eligible for these credits. The other piece is they don't know about the expanded child tax credit. So we know, again, there were people for decades being told that they did not qualify for this credit because they did not make enough. And now all of a sudden they do qualify. And so they may be a little uneasy with even using the term child tax credit. So we've actually been encouraging groups not to call it the child tax credit, but talk about it as a monthly cash benefit for children, those types of things. We also find that many of the clients we work with are overwhelmed by trying to understand some of these consequences of filing, and they're really nervous about it. And so they don't want to do something incorrectly and claim something that they may then have to pay back. And all of that is also with this additional threat of being unable to access digital tools. We know a lot of the tools that go out there are not accessible by many families, either because they do not have access to the internet, they don't have a computer or a cell phone. And so we know that's a huge barrier for many of the families we serve. And trustworthy, affordable help is hard to find. You know, it might not be where that person needs it at the right time, all of those things. And if all of these other barriers are on top of that, that just results in them not getting this tax credit. So after listening to households struggling to claim these tax credits and listening from some of the groups that are already in this work, we partnered with some VITA programs a few years ago to create a tool to help them file taxes. But again, that just wasn't enough to get people who are non-filers, do not have a filing requirement, all of those things. And so we know outreach alone is not enough, but we hope that trusted navigators, like hopefully some of you on this call, will be able to help families access the right resources and information. So what is a navigator? Well, the way we see it, navigators are trusted community-based guides that help marginalized non-filers utilize IRS tools, understand and complete the process of filing their taxes, and navigate additional challenges related to accessing these benefits, which may include the advanced child tax credit. In future years, it might include earned income tax credit, stimulus payments, which are formerly known as economic impact payments, and other state tax credits. Why are navigators important and needed in this time? Well, tax benefits lift more families out of poverty each year than any other economic support program. And every year, low-income families miss out on billions of dollars of these credits. The most common reason, as we just went over, was because they aren't required to file, they don't have access to those filing resources, or they also might mistrust the system. What we've learned over the past few years of working on this is outreach alone is not enough, and so we need those trusted community navigators to access the right resources. So who can be a navigator? Well, first, I just want to kind of dispel this notion that in order to be a navigator, you need to be some sort of tax expert. In actuality, the skills that we're looking for are pretty different from that. We've also linked in our slides, which we'll make available after this presentation, to an IRS FAQ page that basically spells out that individuals and organizations can help others access and complete IRS forms and tools in order to get these payments without having a tax background. But what we really want navigators to be are individuals or organizations trusted in their community. And a couple of helpful attributes that we know are important to the audience we're serving are people who are patient, who are trauma-informed, often bilingual, and they're going to be able to give that person some access to internet if that's possible. Again, I don't know how many times I'm going to have to go back to this, but something I just find that is crucial is, again, you do not need to be a tax expert. I think it's much easier to train somebody on tax than it is to train somebody to be patient when working with somebody in the community who's really experienced trauma and is now trying to jump through all of the hurdles of claiming their benefits. And what types of assistance can a navigator provide? Well, as we've already touched upon the issue of trust, we think one of the most important things that navigators can do is raise awareness and trust into many of these marginalized clients. Many clients are particularly fearful of the IRS, and navigators can bring comfort and validation to the process, especially if they are directly or indirectly associated with trusted community institutions or partners. And of course, answering some basic questions about tax benefits. we know taxes can feel overwhelming, and navigators can help by answering just basic questions and providing some clarity around a variety of topics. And I'm not talking answering every little bit of tax questions that are thrown at you. Most of the questions are just people saying, I've never qualified for that. Why would I qualify for it now? And explaining that the law changed and a lot more people are included in it. They can also help clients determine what next steps they may need to take. So eligibility most clients will not need to take any action to access the advanced child tax credit, but navigators can help them utilize the existing tools to either check on their status, yes, apply for it, or just kind of figure out where they are in the process. And then finally, it's assisting clients with completing their action steps. So this may include giving them access to technology or walking them through tools like Get CTC Simplified Filing Portal or the IRS CTC Update Portal. We've realized that there's just a good amount of ability people feel when somebody's just sitting next to them saying, yep, okay, go to the next page, go to the next screen, all those things. And so I just want to cover a few of the other resources that are available to navigators just to make sure that we understand what are the possible next steps and resources that families may need to use in order to get the CTC. So there are 4 likely next steps. So the first is there's no action needed. And when I say no action needed, it doesn't mean that a client may not be frustrated or may not have already received the child tax credit payment. It means that there might be additional information you need to provide. We actually know there's millions of tax returns that have been filed, but the IRS just hasn't processed yet. And because of that delay, families are not receiving their advanced child tax credit, even though they've done everything they need to do. And so some of it, as hard as this is going to be, is asking a family for patience while the IRS kind of works through their process and issues those payments. I'd rather have families told that they've done everything they need to do than having those families use so much extra resources to try to do something that can't be done until the IRS takes the next step. Then there's the GetCT Simplified Filing Portal, which we will go into. I'll actually be demoing for you a little later today to show you what that actually looks like. And then the CTC Update Portal. And then finally, and this one is less of a resource right now, I'm going to be honest. During formal, kind of traditional tax season and in through the summer, usually volunteer income tax assistance programs are available to help file a full tax return. So families can file their taxes and claim all eligible benefits. But right now, those resources are really limited while those VITA programs prepare for next tax season. So it may be that clients need to wait until next tax season to file that full return. Going a little bit more into depth on each of these resources. So the GetCTC Simplified Filing Portal files what we call a simplified return. This is also what's considered a non-filer return, and it's used only to help somebody claim the advanced child tax credit payments or all 3 of their stimulus payments. So even if they don't have a child, I also want to call out that this is going to be the tool that you can use in order to claim any missed stimulus payments. And then, as I mentioned, some clients may benefit from filing a full 2020 tax return. By filing a full 2020 tax return, in addition to the advanced child tax credit payments and any missed stimulus payments, they could also claim money back in their tax withholding, their earned income tax credit, and any state credits. So there is a good reason why somebody would want to file a full tax return, but knowing how limited those resources are and the extra challenges in doing so, it may be best to have them file a simplified return, at least for now. And then finally, the Child Tax Credit Update Portal. So this portal currently allows clients to check their CTC eligibility status. So see if the IRS has the information they need to issue those child tax credit payments. Update the bank account and mailing address. So if somebody's moved, if they have a bank account that they could have their payments directly deposited in, they can go ahead and give the IRS that information, even if they already filed a tax return. They can also have the option to opt out of advanced child tax credit payments. There are a couple of reasons why somebody might want to do that. And one of the resources we have at our website spells those out. But largely that's if people aren't planning on claiming that child the next year and wants to make sure that they don't owe any money back. Some families might also want to receive the full payment rather than it in advance monthly, broken up into monthly payments. And then this is also a portal where they can see any payment history. So if they're waiting, if they've received the first 2 payments, but didn't receive the third, they can go on and see if a payment was issued, just like their other 2. Going a little bit more into depth, kind of starting from the top and diving a little bit deeper. So with the CTC update portal, and that was the last thing we were just talking about, what it can do and just updating the IRS. One thing I want to call out is that it does require clients go through a rigorous account creation and identity proofing process. We've found a lot of people are not able to do it, but it is something that if somebody hasn't tried getting onto the CTC update portal, having some additional assistance may do the trick. This portal is also not mobile friendly and it's only available in English. So again, just another barrier of why so many families aren't able to actually get onto the portal to make the necessary updates. In the previous slide, as I mentioned, the portal allows for those checking eligibility status, changing the mailing address and direct deposit information, opting out, and viewing history. There are some future additions to the update portal that are promised by the IRS. There's a large group of us, but I'm gonna just let you all know that I have a lot of doubts if the IRS will actually be able to do this before the end of the year, or at least before the end of the last advance payment goes out. But supposedly in the future, it will allow clients to add or remove children, including those born in 2021. So babies born in 2021 are eligible to receive the advance payments and will allow their parents to receive the full tax credit on their 2021 tax return, but there's no way to include those children currently. Hopefully in the future, the update portal will allow families to add those children born, but that's not the case just yet. It also will allow families to change their income. So if the last return that they filed with the IRS had a much higher income than what they anticipate having in 2021, and that reduction in income would make them then eligible for those advance payments, they should in the future be able to change that income. And then the last thing is in the future, it should allow people to re-enroll in advance payments. So if somebody opted out of advance payments and then realizes they do want those advance payments, they should be able to do that on the CTC update portal. Again, all of those features are hopefully going to be available in the future, but currently they are not. Just getting into Get CTC. So Get CTC is designed to help folks claim their advanced child tax credit and any missed stimulus payments through the simplified portal. This portal can be seen as a supplement to the IRS non-filer sign-up tool that was available earlier this year, but has since shut down on October 15th. So based on our experience of working with clients missing the tax credit, we knew we needed to make Get CTC mobile friendly, available in English and Spanish, make sure that there's chat assistance available if someone gets stuck or has any additional questions. We also formatted the portal to be interview style with 1 to 3 questions per page to help determine who qualifies for which credit and ensure that the tool is right for them. It's open through November 15th. And as I mentioned, at this point, the IRS non-filer tool is no longer available. So Get CTC is sort of the only portal you have at this point to claim those advanced child tax credit payments. And we're also excited that it was built in collaboration with the White House and the US Department of Treasury. And so in order to use Get CTC, clients need either an email or cell phone. They need to know their family's social security numbers or those individual taxpayer identification numbers. They need to know the basic information for everybody claimed on the return. So think legal name, date of birth, those types of things. If they filed in 2019, they'll need to know the adjusted gross income from their last year's tax return. Since they're doing this themselves, this is what the IRS uses as sort of an identity verification process. For most families that haven't received the credit, they wouldn't have filed in 2019 though. So hopefully this is a large barrier for your families. And then optional is a bank account. We really encourage anybody who's receiving these advance payments to do direct deposit, just because it'll get to them faster in a more secure way. And we also know many of the families who are missing may not live in or have a permanent address that they feel comfortable mailing checks to, months in the future. So we just really encourage people to have a bank account if possible. When using the tool, it's filed directly with the IRS And after they have submitted that return, they will receive a notification if it's been accepted. Show you a bit more, I'm going to move on to a demo. So let me get CTC. Let me just make sure, yep, that I'm sharing the right screen. All right, perfect. So I'm just going to be walking you through the tool. I put it in this mobile format just to show you how it's going to look on a cell phone. And so for the first few pages, it's mostly making sure this is the right tool for them. So people who make over the filing threshold do not qualify for this tool. So make sure you didn't make over that amount of money. We're going to go ahead and say no. And it's just letting them know that they're filing a simplified return. They could file a full tax return if they have all of their documents and want to claim all of their credits, but we're going to go ahead. I'm going to say that I haven't filed a 2020 tax return. And I'm going to say I did not file a 2019 tax return. Again, if they filed a full tax return for 2019, they'll need to enter additional information. And I'm going to go ahead and say my main home list of states. Nobody can claim me as a dependent. So as you'll see, I just want to slow down and also call out that as you'll see, we try to ask only a few questions per page. At any time, if somebody would rather use the Spanish or switch to Spanish, they can do so. We can also make sure that they're landing directly on the Spanish page to begin with. So hopefully that will help with any Spanish-speaking families you're serving. And then at the bottom or kind of throughout the page, you'll see this chat with us, and that will connect you with one of our client success partners or volunteers to help just add additional information. So let's go on and enter information. This is where I'm going to be really slow because I cannot type and talk at the same time. So please forgive me. And a phone number is required by the IRS, but just a reminder, the IRS will never call you. So don't let somebody think the IRS is going to call them. There's also at some of the bottom of the pages this helpful text. So if we're asking a question that we think some people might be a little confused by, we have the ability to just show them. We didn't want any page to seem too overwhelming with too much text, which is why we hide some of that. And then for me, I'm going to choose email, but clients can choose to be contacted either by text or email. They'll need to be able to access this right away just because it's going to send a verification code. And then they'll receive something that's not 6 zeros in a row, but they will receive a verification to make sure it's them. And the reason we do that is we don't actually want clients to have to create a username and a password that then makes it really hard for them to log back into the portal. So we did that intentionally, that it's using a text message or email to verify their identity. All right. And this is where, would you like to add a child or family member in order to claim the child tax credit? We're going to go ahead and say yes. And choosing that. Asking a couple of follow-up information. I'm going through this probably quicker than you want a client to go through this because you do want them to read all of the different things. And what I'm not showing you is what happens when you click one of these things, and it might take you to a different set of questions. And so we have a step-by-step guide on our Navigator resource page that helps identify what is every screen you could possibly be looking at and what are we trying to get from that screen, so that if you're really curious why you're seeing something or why you're being asked something, we will have a guide to help you with that. But you could also have the client use the chat with us if they're confused. And there's going to be different moments throughout this process that you're given the opportunity to review everything, make sure everything looks good. You can go back and edit it. And on this page, you can add additional family members, but I'm going to go ahead and say I'm done adding family members. And this is where we're trying to figure out how much, if any, of the stimulus payments you may have missed. And so this, based on the information I provided, calculates how much they should have received or how much they were qualified for. And so clients can say, yep, I received that amount, or I received less than this amount. And this is going to ask if you received any amount, because if not, it'll just calculate the full amount for you. But I'm going to go ahead and say I did receive part of it. And I'm going to say $1,200 for the first one and $600 for the second one. And so what that does is calculates what is the recovery rebate credit, which is basically how do you recover the first two missed stimulus payments. And I'm going to go ahead and say, yes, claim my missing stimulus. And the third stimulus payment is automatically calculated. It's not added to this return. It's just kind of a wonky thing the IRS has on this return, but then it gives them the information they need to process the third one. But that's why you're not entering in information from that $1,400 per person stimulus payment. And I'm going to say direct deposit, since we're hoping most people will be able to use that. All right. You want to make sure, again, people are taking their time. When they're entering this information, they will have the chance to go back and edit it. But once a return is submitted, we cannot make these changes. And so we want to make sure that they're putting in the information correctly the first time. And here I already messed up and didn't confirm that my name is on this bank account. That is an IRS requirement that in order to issue a refund into a bank account, the client's name needs to be on that bank account. And so just be prepared for that. Again, you can go back and change any of that information if you need to, but I'm going to go ahead and say go forward with it. And then even though I did direct deposit, the IRS still wants to know mailing address. And it's important to use whatever is the most stable or secure mailing address for that person. I know that might be a really hard thing to ask somebody if they don't have a secure mailing address or permanent residence, but it is one of those that the IRS may contact them through a letter in the mail, and they will use this address as their permanent address, or at least until they file another tax return or update it with the IRS. Again, just making sure that everything is good. If there's an apartment number, if there's a unit number, you want to make sure that's added, but I'm going to go ahead and say continue. And there's something that somebody might have, which is an identity protection PIN, but I'm going to go ahead and say we don't have that. Most people don't. And this is giving a good summary of just what's going on with that tax return. So here I am as the taxpayer, my mailing address, my dependent, my bank account information. Then they're asked to create a 5-digit PIN. And this is something every time they file a return, it usually automatically creates a PIN, or they're asked to do so. I'm going to do the really imaginative 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And this gives them a summary of their total payments that they should be expecting to receive based on the information they provided. Now, this may change and alter if the IRS has different information on their files. So, for example, if they've already received the third stimulus payment and it won't calculate a different payment, they're not going to receive an additional third stimulus payment. And this is sort of the legal things of saying, basically, I am ready to file a tax return using the information I just provided. File my return and the current tax. So it's been electronically filed. There are options to contact us or submit additional documents. Since they didn't submit any documents to begin with, they shouldn't need to do that. But once that's done, clients will receive an initial notification letting them know, great, thank you for submitting a tax return through GetCTC. You'll receive a notification when the IRS has accepted or rejected the return. If for any reason a return rejects, they will get a prompt saying, it looks like there's some changes we need to make, and it'll let them log into the portal using their cell phone or email address, and it'll give them a reason and possible next steps. There's usually quite a few reasons why a return might reject. And so in addition to the statement that they can read saying these are the next steps you need to take, they again can always contact us so that somebody can help walk them through that. All right, and with that, I'm just going to go back to my slideshow. So just a reminder of the timeline, because it's obviously getting a little confusing now with things closing at different times. We're obviously past October 15th. And so unfortunately, most free tax prep has already closed. So the opportunity to file a full tax return may not be right now, and it may be when free tax filing opens up again in January 2021. Get CTC closes on November 15th. So between now and November 15th is when we need to really push families to use Get CTC to claim any of their advance payments. And then in January 2021, free tax filing opens again, which means that anybody who missed all those advance payments, weren't able to file for whatever reason, can go back and file their 2021 tax return. And for those who did file this year and claimed the advanced child tax credit payments, need to file again in order to get the second half of their payments. So they're only receiving the first half of their eligible child tax credit payments when they need to file once more to get the second half of those payments. So regardless if somebody filed this year or not, they are going to be filing again next year. And in between November and January, there's still a lot of work we can be doing, even though we can't be filing a tax return. So that might include making sure families have the documents that they need in order to file next year. If they need to file a full tax return and they want to use one of the volunteer income tax assistance sites, we need to see social security cards and ITINs for every member of the household. And that's usually one of the most challenging things for people accessing one of the VITA services. So we're going to be putting out kind of a toolkit of here's the messages that need to happen between November and January. Just want to call out real quickly before we go to a Q&A session, just some additional resources. So again, you are not expected to remember any of the information I said. In fact, I would not remember most of the information I said. So if you feel a little overwhelmed, that's completely okay. I probably told you more than you actually need to know. But what you do need to know are that there are resources to help somebody else through this process. So whether that's the chat assistance that I showed when using Get CTC, as much as that's intended for clients, we have seen a number of navigators using that, saying, hey, I'm here, I'm helping somebody, they have this question, I don't know how to answer them. Our client success team are all IRS certified, so they know a lot more about the actual tax laws and intricate details, and have been helping people through this process quite a bit. So they most likely will have a really good answer for you and have resources to point you to. In addition, we have on our website a Navigators page that has a number of different resources. One of this is a clearer demo, so it's actually a much nicer demo that was recorded using Get CTC, so you can go through that again. There are many how-to guides for Get CTC and the CTC update portal. So again, if you just need kind of a guide to help you while you're talking to somebody about this, we've got those for you. We also have a frequently asked question document that are asked by actual people who are doing this in the field rather than us assuming what you're asking, because it's usually different than what you're actually getting asked. And then every other Friday through November 12th, we have Navigator Q&A webinars. So if you have questions, we don't get to all of them today, or you don't even know what questions to ask, every other Friday, you can join other people around the country for a Q&A session that helps connect them to answers and other people in their communities. And then a couple more in-depth guides. That is definitely if you want to get into the weeds of all of this. There are some much more in-depth guides, but definitely not a requirement. And then we also have some outreach toolkits that we recommend, but it sounds like already from talking to the facilitators of this presentation that there's already toolkits in the works. So another one, but I want to open it up and I'm going to stop sharing so we can kind of all see each other. But want to open it up to additional questions that you may have.
Thanks so much, Courtney. There are some questions on the chat. I'm not sure if you can see them, but why don't we start with those? One is, can you please talk more about the November 15th deadline?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. It looks like Kate asked that. So Get CTC closes on November 15th, and that's largely because the IRS basically pauses on accepting any electronically filed returns on a given time of the year, and November 15th is that deadline. So we will be filing up until that, or on that day, and then anything after that, it's just they're going to need to file next tax season when the IRS opens up the e-file system again. Hopefully that helped. But please also raise your hand or come and mute if you want to ask a clarifying question with that.
Yeah, there was a clarification that you mean January 2022, right?
Yep. Yep. So, and I apologize, tax years are different than tax seasons. So
Yeah, well,
2022, you'll be filing your 2021 return, but yes, January 2022. Thanks so much,
Yeah.
Nicole.
time means nothing during the pandemic. We have a
question.
question about how long does it take to get the ITIN? And I heard something about you can apply for an ITIN at the same time. Is that right?
Yeah, so if you're working with a taxpayer who doesn't have an ITIN or so obviously because they don't have a social security number and they haven't gone through that process, it can be lengthy. And so what they would need to do, and there's a couple of resources they can share after this, where somebody basically needs to apply for an ITIN while they're filing a tax return. Unfortunately, that can't be done through Get CTC because it requires that you mail in that tax return to the IRS. And then one of the things we strongly recommend, because in order for that ITIN application to be processed, somebody has to verify their original documents, which include a passport, an ID or a citizen ID, whatever that may look like. And so rather than mailing that off to the IRS for months, there are agencies called certified acceptance agents that you can take that passport and document into. They certify you get to keep your original documents, and then you can mail that out. Again, not a lot of resources outside of tax season, but I would strongly encourage anybody who doesn't have an ITIN to still take this time to apply in order to get that.
Great, thanks. Questions are coming in. From JR, we have a client without a set address. Can we use our own office for their address?
Yeah, so that has been largely how many people who do not have their own permanent address do it. One thing to be aware is that sometimes the IRS, if too many people, so if we're talking hundreds of people are using the same address, the IRS may flag it as a possible fraudulent behavior, saying that too many, this looks questionable. That happened a lot with the first round of stimulus payments last summer. Once they realized, especially if it was a housing or a homeless shelter, any kind of number of service-oriented locations, they usually lifted it pretty quickly. But that's also a good reason why you wouldn't use your own mailing address as somebody for multiple people. But yes, you can use an institution's address. Just be aware that if too many people use that, the IRS may flag it and it may just slow things down a little bit.
Okay. There's a question from Rosalinda. Are they able to file their stimulus and child tax credit on their income tax filing if they didn't get or if they didn't get it, or they missed filing their stimulus and CTC this year?
Yeah, so on the Get CTC portal, they can claim both those missed stimulus payments and the child tax credit portal. For next year, we're actually still waiting for the IRS to give some guidelines on how this is going to be done for any of the first two stimulus payments. They will still be able to claim them. It's just exactly how they would next year may look slightly different. So they might have to, what I'm a little worried about is they might have to file both a 2020 return and a 2021 tax return to get all of the stimulus payments and the child tax credit payments if they missed everything. But hopefully that's not the case, and hopefully they can just file for one. We haven't seen the IRS's regulations on that just yet.
So that's another reason that we should really try to get people to use Get CTC between now and November 15th, right?
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, absolutely. It's one of those that while they can claim their full child tax credit payment, no problem on their 2021 tax return, the first two stimulus payments is the one in question. So just let's get as many people into that system now as possible.
Great. Mai asks, does Get CTC work for those who didn't get their full child tax credits, not just those who didn't get their full stimulus payments?
Yes. So if somebody, well, actually, let me slow down. So Get CTC is filing for the advance payments. If somebody is already receiving some of those advance payments, but not all of them, they may need to use the update portal to provide updated information. They can only use the Get CTC portal if they haven't filed a 2020 tax return. Should have said, I can't believe that didn't come up on one of my slides, or I completely missed it. But yes, if they've already received their stimulus payments, they just need to claim the child tax credit. They can absolutely use Get CTC to do so.
I saw Kate had a question earlier on the screen. She had her hand raised. I just wanted to flag her if she still had a question.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, no, the question was regarding the November 15th date and whether if people don't file it, they still have the chance to get the child tax credit on 2022. And it seems that that's the case. Is that correct? So if a non-filer misses that date, then in 2022, they'll still have the opportunity to get that money.
Yeah, Kate, thanks so much for that clarifying question. Yes, so they in 2022 can file to get their full credit. So if they didn't receive any of it for whatever reason, they weren't able to file in time, or something happened that prevented them from doing so, they can claim the full tax or the full child tax credit payment on their 2021 tax return filed in 2022.
Okay, we still have a few in the chat. This is like rapid fire. If a client filed taxes for 2020, but is currently separated from their spouse that filed the taxes, how does the primary child care person get the CTC?
We actually just had this come up recently. So what they would need to do is go to the CTC update portal and add in their personal bank account, whether it's a bank account or a mailing address where they are now. And at that point, what it does is it splits the payments so that half of the child tax credit payment or half of the advance payment goes to the other person and half of the child tax credit payment goes to the updated address. I know that's not probably the solution they want, but that's the best one we have, unless the other parent agrees that they should not be receiving those advanced child tax credit payments, and then they can go in and opt out of them. But the IRS, since they filed married filing jointly in 2020, the IRS has kind of wiped their hands, saying that's not necessarily our problem, that is not still the case at this point. We're issuing the money based on a 2020 tax return. So again, using the CTC update portal to provide the custodial parents' information is going to be the best way that they can at least get part of that credit.
Okay, and a related message that I got privately in the chat was about the one partner or ex-spouse is no longer in contact with the family at all and is not in contact with the child, but is claiming the credit. So is it the same right now, that the best they can do is get half, or is there a way to try to fix this that you know of? I know you're not a tax expert.
No, this is actually something we've talked about at great length. So one of the second most common reason a return is not accepted through Get CTC is because the dependent has already been claimed on somebody else's tax return. And the way we handle that and sort of our advice, and there is on our Navigator page, there's this common rejects and possible next steps. And so the first one is if that's an amicable relationship and they can be in contact with them. Largely it's saying like, okay, that other person can opt out of payments, or they can send them the payments to the other person, and then the correct person who should be claiming them would claim the entire benefit in 2022. If it is not an amicable kind of relationship, they can't get a hold of that person, that other person wrongly claimed their child for this child tax credit. One of the recommendations is that they paper file a 2020 tax return, showing that they can claim that they are the only person eligible to claim that child. And basically what that does is opens up an IRS investigation to say, okay, who actually has the right to claim this child? And a lot of it is based off of, where does the child live? And so they're going to ask for additional information like, can you submit a school record that shows the mailing address is the same address as your mailing address, or they've got a couple of different things like that to try to show who is the rightful person who should be claiming that child. That takes a really long time. I'm not going to, that's like 4 to 6 months, which I know will defeat the purpose of an advance child tax credit payment. But by going through that process, it sort of raises this red flag on the other person's tax return. And then the IRS can issue what's called an identity protection PIN for the child. And what that PIN does is basically anytime you file with that child on your tax return in the future, you have to enter a new PIN each year in order to claim that child that's issued by the IRS. So somebody else wouldn't be able to do that because they wouldn't receive the PIN from the IRS. So it's kind of a very long, drawn out process, but it is one of those that will help prevent somebody else from claiming that child in the future incorrectly. The other, this is a horrible thing and not something that the IRS would agree, and I'm sure in my mind, but there usually always is, even before the child tax credit increase like this, sort of a race to file first, because as whoever claims the child first, it's assumed that they get to claim that child, and then the person who files later, their return will reject, and then they need to go through the steps. So it's kind of, if somebody is not able to receive the advance payments, again, going through that process is our recommendation, but it's also file as soon as possible next year so that that person can claim the entirety of that child tax credit payment. Kind of horrible advice, but yeah.
It's the best the IRS can give us. Killian has his hand up. Killian?
Sorry.
Sorry.
So the CTC portal, are we, or who are the navigators? Are they supposed to register to be considered a navigator?
That's a great question. So the IRS hasn't required anybody to register as a navigator. There's no formal training process or anything like that. And they have a whole page kind of saying like, we just want to open this up to as many people. So anybody on this call, I mean, our stance on navigators is look through some of the materials, go through a training like this, and use your resources, which often is chat with us. We don't want you to feel like you're responsible for every question that may come up, but usually it's just getting somebody onto Get CTC or the CTC update portal and just walking them through it. It's usually an access issue rather than a tax question issue. But if those tax questions do come up, or these complicated matters like who gets to claim the child and all of those pieces, that's why I would just encourage you to use the chat with us. So basically all of you can be considered navigators and help somebody through this process without a formal registration or certification process.
Okay, we have a few questions that I think are quick, and then one that might be a little bit longer, and we only have 4 minutes left, just to give you a sense of where we are. One is, how do you apply for an ITIN?
That is a pretty long question. It's through this form W7. I can, if it's okay with you, Nicole, I have a couple of resources I can send as a follow-up in an email that you can send out to the group.
But it's basically an IRS form that you have to submit, right?
Correct. And then you have to mail everything to the IRS for them to process the first time.
Yeah, and we'll share that with folks. Will this site give me copies of my tax return?
So
I guess when you apply.
Yeah, so when clients go on to use the application, they can go on back to the portal and download the tax return that is created. And the tax return is basically showing their basic information and $1 of income, just because that's the way the IRS rules exist currently.
Will they ask for a copy of the Social Security card that somebody's lost it, but they remember their number?
So for the Get CTC, we do not need to see a copy of their Social Security number, so they can just enter it, which is part of the reason we love this site so much.
Right. And the one that's a little bit longer, there's a belief in our community that if you file for the CTC, it will affect your future taxes, or they're going to have to pay it back. Is this true?
That is basically not true. So one, the CTC is not considered taxable income. So when you file your tax return, it's not included in income. It doesn't disqualify you for any other benefits. There are people who make over $40,000, and there's different income brackets, may have to pay back a portion if they are not the qualifying person in 2021. So let's say with that like mixed custodial status, where maybe parents switch off every other year who's filing. And let's say parent A filed in 2020 and started receiving the advance payments, but parent B was actually claiming the child in 2021. If parent A makes, let's say, $200,000, they're going to have to pay back the advance payments they got. But if parent A made less than $50,000, they're not going to essentially have to pay back that money.
Okay, great. Deb posted the webpage in the chat where we'll start putting lots of these resources, that especially the ones that came up in this session and the ones that Courtney mentioned. So, definitely look there. Just to let you know, I'm going to be contacting Pacific Gateway Center to translate some of the outreach materials that Courtney recommended into a bunch of the languages that we need here in Hawaii, because there are not resources in the kind of languages that we need here. We're going to try to get it done as fast as possible. So just keep bookmark that page and we'll throw those things up. Also, everyone will be getting an email from us after this presentation with a link to this recorded session, as well as links to a lot of these resources that have been mentioned so that you have it in your email. And there's been a lot about questions. There's the question and answer sessions that are going to be, there are 2 more between now and November 12th on Friday mornings at 8 a.m. Hawaii time that Courtney mentioned, where you can do question and answer with their folks. And as she mentioned, when you're actually on the portal, there's a chat function, so you can always ask some of Code for America's people right there. So I think those are the best ways for people who have questions, right, Courtney?
Yeah, that's what I would recommend. I'm also happy. I'm happy to put in the chat my email if somebody has, if it's between now and the next Navigator Q&A. I don't want to make you wait that entire time. So feel free to email me if you have those questions.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Courtney. I know it's late for you where you are, but I agree with some of the folks who are saying this was helpful. This was really helpful to me. And yeah, Courtney just put her email in the chat. Does anyone else want to close?
Yes, I just had a couple of statements. So folks, we, Hawaii Coalition for Immigrant Rights and HCAN came together with Code for America, and we actually have a little bit of money to help get this work done. And so we're going to be bringing on 4 navigators, community leads that are going to help us do outreach to specific communities. We're going to have a Spanish-speaking community lead, somebody also working in the Filipino community, and then also likely a Tongan community navigator and or a Marshallese and a Chuukese speaking community lead. So if you have someone, right now it's about 80 hours total. It's about $25 to $30 an hour. And if they become one of the community leads, we can pay them for their time that they were on this training and other trainings. That person would be responsible for helping us to reach out to 500 individuals. We'd help strategize on how to do that outreach with the right language appropriate materials, and then helping us to sign up 50 different families for the child tax credit. So if you have somebody in your network who could use, who has demonstrated that they are interested and have done a little bit of this work, but maybe are underpaid or underutilized and would like a little bit more cash over the next 2 months, especially since we're pushing up front, please, I put my email in here before, but I will put it in again. And we are trying to get working on this right away. So if you have somebody, we'll have a meeting next week where we can kind of talk through questions for potential community leads. Unfortunately, we can only hire about 4 or 5 with the cash that we have, but would love to see people from the community getting training on this and doing the outreach. And we're just here to support. Or
you,
if you have
Liza.
also areas like you think it would be great to do a Facebook message or you know, a Facebook video or on the radio, or you know, send somebody to our church, please, and come talk about this, feel free to email me those suggestions and links as well.
Yeah, and the time crunch is between now and November 15th to try to get as many folks who haven't filed in through the portal. So we know it's really short notice.